Hello, and welcome to the Q&A that I just recorded for January 2024 and then forgot to hit the recording button because I'm a fucking idiot. Yes, I recorded responses to every single one of these questions but didn't press the record button. So, shame in the comments for me being a moron and having to spend another 30 to 40 minutes recording all of this voiceover. Anyways, here we go with the first question. Again. Typhoon says, have you ever thought about doing a behind-the-scenes video, either going over your hardware and software, microphones, keyboard, etc., to do a day in the life of Eclipse where you show us, the viewers, what your workflow is, how you stay on track and balance outside life to work/fun. Love the return of Eclipse FPS. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Typhoon. And as for the behind-the-scenes video, I don't really ever see this happening. The thing is, my life is just not all that interesting. I wake up, usually later than when I want to, then I go downstairs, I fill up my water, and eat breakfast. And then after I eat breakfast, I come onto my computer, and I work on videos. From whenever I've woken up until usually anywhere from 4 to 7 p.m. In the last few months, it's pretty much always been Tarkov, and then I'll play that until some of my friends get on, then I'll play with them until it gets pretty late, and then I'll go to bed. Rinse, repeat every single day aside from weekends where I've got all the color guard stuff going on, so I'm not even home to touch my computer. But yeah, at the end of the day, my life is just not nearly interesting enough to give you a day in the life. It would be like 3 minutes long, and so that's not a very likely thing for you to see. Next question is from Eagle9610, and they say, from your experience with the TCA staff team, behind the scenes and everything, who would you say is the most friendly or chill of them all? Just curious about your relationship with the rest of the staff team and whether you view them as coworkers or friends. This is a great question. Well, at least the latter end of it. When it comes to the former end of it, who's the most friendly and chill of the staff members? Well, I can't speak for any of the people on the rest of the staff because I basically exclusively talk to the people on the design team, but if I had to pick one person from the design team, I think I'd probably go with Ike, and I don't actually know if he's super chill or not, but it's mostly that he just doesn't get involved in a lot of the big blow-up arguments that happen in the design chat, so he's just sort of the person that comes to mind when it comes to all of that stuff. As for the other part of the question about my relationship with the rest of the staff team, and whether or not I view them as coworkers or friends, that's a great question, and I think it's mostly that it falls into the middle of those two things. It's not quite as soulless as me, like, seeing them as sort of a means to an end, you know, because I have a better understanding of the viewpoints and opinions and just sort of, like, how they think, like, how these people tick, than I would if it was just a sort of coworker relationship. But on the flip side, it's not like we're going around playing games together all the time or something like that. And so despite the fact that I interact with these people probably even more a lot of the time than some of my actual friends, I don't think I would necessarily call them friends. I have a lot of faith in them, and I trust them to make the right calls, especially when I'm not around, in order to try to put my input onto things. But that being said, I also can't say that we're like super tight or anything like that. And to sort of add on to that, we did have a bit of a, drama situation where one of the design team members basically stabbed everyone in the back, which has got all of us on edge for a little bit. And I think that's sort of dying down now to some extent, but it's also got most of us on edge because the reality of the day is that situation showed everyone in the design team that at any point someone could just actually be a two-faced piece of shit, and we wouldn't necessarily know that. And for people like me, and for people like the head of staff and the owner of the game, that's highly, highly unlikely because we don't really stand anything to gain from that, and we stand basically solely to gain by the game doing well. But when it comes to these other people that are unaffiliated and don't really have any sort of room to lose if they get fired or anything like that, even if I've known them for a long time, it's a little bit hard to trust them now because they could just fuck everyone else over. It's not a huge deal, but it's definitely an underlying problem as of late. Next question's from Not a Blightmain 6177, and they say, if the storyline in TCA gets longer and has better quality in the future updates, do you plan on making storyline challenges like the ones you did for YBA? Here's the thing about the storyline, and that thing is that it's not very likely to get worked on. Peter, the owner of TCA, does not like working on the storyline. Apparently, it's a real pain in the ass to work on. The code is old, it requires rigorous testing in order to make sure things don't break, and just overall, it's annoying. Never mind the fact that the reality of the day is YBA's storyline is ass, and in terms of quality level, the only thing that makes it quote-unquote better than ours is the fact that it's longer. That's literally it. If we look at it from a simple content perspective, you do the exact same activities in both, and neither of them are rocket science. It's literally walk to NPC, talk to them, walk to another NPC, talk to them, kill an NPC, walk back, talk to another NPC. That's every single quest for both storylines. And that's not like shameless ripping off, that's just as low effort, uninspired as you can get when it comes to a storyline in the mode, because it's the easiest thing to do. So if we were to go and rework the storyline, it wouldn't just be shamelessly making it longer. Ideally, it would be making it more interesting, adding more things that would make it more interesting. But the problem with that is that the reason storylines are usually so low effort is because they're things that people will only ever do once and then they're not going to do again. So putting a whole bunch of effort into a live service game to give people something that they've already done, and for a lot of people are not going to go back and redo even if we do rework it, just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If it was to get all of that stuff done to it, would I go back and make storyline challenges for the game? Maybe. Maybe I would, but definitely not in the current state it's in, and even if we made it longer, still probably not, because it's just not good. Gtoru28312, sorry, I butchered your name, says, are you planning on making a series of reviewing people's gameplay and giving advice to them on TCA? I know you talked about it before, but never touched on the idea again. In my opinion, it'll be a great community interaction activity. Keep up the good work. I love your videos, really entertaining. Yes, still planned. I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I forgot. So hopefully within the next, 1 to 2 weeks, I'll throw out either a community post or an announcement on my Discord or something like that, have people probably upload their gameplay as either a public or unlisted video on YouTube, so that way I can grab it and use it for those videos, just because I don't want to be going around downloading files and all that kind of sketchy stuff. So yeah, I still want to do this. Expect it hopefully relatively soon, and I don't have much else to say on that other than thanks for reminding me, I forgot. Paylol1781 says, balance-related question for TCA. On a recent video, you mentioned how Star Platinum was too strong, and instead of nerfing it, you preferred to make stands as strong as Star Platinum. What's your opinion with the recent nerfs like Star Platinum of the World, Six Pistols, and Crazy Diamond? That's an odd question, mostly because Crazy Diamond didn't really just get a flat nerf, it got some buffs and some nerfs. Six Pistols, oh man, I don't even know where to start with that. That stand is just a mess, and is probably going to get a complete overhaul to some of its systems at some point in order to make it just, well, better in terms of playing with it and playing against it. And then Star Platinum of the World just generally ate some nerfs, none of them being super huge and shouldn't make a huge difference on gameplay other than, making it a little bit more tolerable to fight without really changing a whole lot about how you play it, so that shouldn't be too bad. As for the first part of this question, balance is very nuanced, and it's a lot less cut and dry than people like to think it is. It's very cut and dry when you're doing simple things, like adjusting cooldowns or adjusting damage. It's easy to go in and make something do less damage or make you able to use it less. And generally speaking, those things won't have that huge effects on gameplay. That's why when you really want to make some meaningful changes, you tend to mess with some properties of the moves, and that's where things get out of hand very quickly. The second you start changing things to being blockable or parryable, unparryable, unblockable, all that kind of nonsense, and increasing windups, decreasing windups, that's where things start getting out of hand and you need to do a whole bunch of testing on it. And I don't know, it's just a mess, and people seriously underestimate how much of a mess it can end up being. As for the idea of making sure things are strong without making them, overpowered, and trying not to nerf things down and rather bring them up, that's also one of those things that's a lot more nuanced than you probably think it is. And another thing that even I have problems with and argue with people on the design team about all the time. Just recently with Crazy Diamond, there was a knee-jerk when the most recent balance update came out because the rock trap is unblockable for Crazy Diamond now. And a whole bunch of people were like, this is overpowered. Whereas it's literally been 1 day since this has come out, so give it a little bit of time at the very least instead of literally knee-jerking on the first day. And number two, if it is really strong, well, Crazy Diamond is not a stand with Destructive Power 5. It is not a stand with Time Stop. It's not a stand with Time Skip. And those are the stands right now that are pretty much all the top tiers. So if we have a really strong option on something that doesn't have any of those options, do we really want to immediately be reverting or nerfing something that's now going to give some of these stands that have all these other crazy good tools a run for their money? Like, we've finally gotten to a point where something might be too strong on the level of those other stands, and it's like, oh no, we gotta go back, and it's like, no. And the same thing almost happened with Gold Experience Requiem. We changed the counter on Gold Experience Requiem, which ended up being the only real nerf that GER got. But initially, when GER came out, there was a whole bunch of reactions and stuff, and so we almost lowered the damage across the board on GER, which I think if we had done would have been stupid, because right now GER can compete with a lot of these stands with really high destructive power and time skip and time stop and all that kind of stuff, and we want to make sure that stands that don't have those are good and can still compete. So rather than nuking the ones with time skip, time stop, and high destructive power, we want to bring the other ones up to par, if that makes sense. So that's kind of where we're at with balance, or at least where I'm at with balance. I can't speak for the rest of the people. Sonic2887 says, this is not a question, but more of a thank you message to say that your video on Deepwoken has inspired me a lot to play the game. There hasn't been any moments where I didn't have fun. This game is awesome, thank you, and I hope you can make more Deepwoken videos in the future. I got a lot of comments asking about Deepwoken videos, but I just left this one in particular, mostly because it was really nice, and I wanted to thank Sonic for the nice words. So thank you, Sonic. As for the lack of Deepwoken videos, like I said, I've gotten a lot of where's Deepwoken, and the reality is I don't really want to play it anymore, and I can't totally explain to you why that is. I just feel like I'm sort of done with the game, and it's not that I'm done with it because I've completely run out of things to do. It's not that I'm done with it because I can't get any better. It's not that I'm done with it because I hate the game and I'm mad at it. It's sort of like this feeling of I'm satisfied with what I've played, and when I go to log on, I don't really feel like I have too much of a reason to. The only things that I really want to do on Deepwoken are things that are sort of directly tied to bad mechanics. So, like, I want to go through Layer 2, but Layer 2 has some awful mechanics, and I sort of touched on them in my Layer 2 video, mostly as jokes. But the reality of Layer 2 is there's basically two major extremes when you go down there. You either have a light hook and you're immortal, and your actions mean nothing, or you don't have a light hook and the punishment is as severe as humanly possible. And so reality is you're going to go down with a light hook, and you're also going to die, because if you don't have experience, that's just going to happen. And when you do die, then you have to wait for the light hook to recharge. That takes like 40 minutes if you used all of it, and you're in the depths, so it's not like you have anything better to do, because if you mess around in the depths and you fuck up, then again, you get wiped, and then you need to go level all the way back up and then go back down there. So you're probably just going to log out, do something else for 40 minutes, and come back. And that's so lame, so boring, and just poorly designed. So I can't be bothered to do a Layer 2. And I don't really have any huge urges to go try to like make builds or fight people or do any of that stuff, because I've already done a fair amount of it, and I just don't, like, I'm not invested, I guess. I don't really know how to explain it. I would still highly recommend Deepwoken to anyone who hasn't played it, and I think it's a really good game, but I, myself, am pretty much done with it and don't have any huge reasons to want to return. Next is from Livorus, who says, is there going to be more tutorial/guide videos for TCA? Personally, I enjoy the videos and have actually avoided playing the game again in hopes that an accessories guide was coming. Well, I can promise you accessories aren't that huge of a deal that you need to avoid playing to wait for a guide. Here's your guide for accessories. Use literally any of them other than Lisa's glasses or Bruford's shoes. Just put on two of them that aren't those two, and you'll probably be just fine. Because none of the accessories are so hugely game-changing that if you don't just throw on two random ones, that you won't be pretty much at the same level as anyone else. Sure, there are better combinations than others, but again, none of them are going to put you at such a massive stat advantage or disadvantage that you're going to get crushed. Anyways, as for the guide videos, I kind of like doing them, kind of don't. I've got a like love-hate relationship with guide videos, but the reality is that the guide videos, especially when it comes to TCA, are not very well received usually. Not that they're not well received in terms of people don't like them, but mostly because they don't do very well. TCA's player count is not very high. My view count's slowly declining because of that, not hugely surprising, but there are still a significant amount of people that watch my video that don't play the game, and so they don't give a rat's ass when I put out a guide on a game they don't play. They'll watch me have fun and mess around in a game they don't play, because it's fun to watch, but they will not watch a guide. And so the guide videos usually flop, and that's why you really don't see that many of them. Next is an interesting one, and it's, does the design team for TCA actually go through community suggestions? Since we haven't really received any content that's from suggestions that isn't balance changes, I would like to know what their stance on it is. Well, until very recently, we basically didn't have a roadmap whatsoever, the design team that is, as to what was coming next. So if you were suggesting things like stands or specs, I don't know how they were deciding what went where. And I can almost certainly assume that it wasn't coming from the suggestions channel. As for nowadays, very recently, we did get a roadmap. So we have a general idea of what stands and specs are coming. And because of that, again, if you put out a suggestion for something that isn't on the roadmap, then I can't we can't really use that because we're not making that stand right now. And on top of that, when we have the roadmap, we're coming up with movesets already for those stands. So a lot of suggestions just sort of fall to the wayside, and that's why balanced suggestions and things like that have a tendency of being more well received than the other things. And when it comes to suggestions for quality of life things, a lot of that stuff is usually already known about behind the scenes. It's just that it has taken a backseat in terms of trying to get more content out or some other specific reason. As for balance changes, again, like I said earlier when we were talking about balance, there's a lot of nuance that goes into balancing the game. There's a lot of quote-unquote competitive players who think that they have like the end-all be-all opinions on everything, and if we just listen to them, the game would be perfect. I can assure you that that is far, far, far from the truth, because what a lot of those people don't realize is that there are game modes and people playing the game that don't play 1v1s. I know, shocking. And on top of that fact, there's a lot of people who play this game who kind of just suck ass. They're really bad. And so if you take things like the most recent thing is King Crimson. We're all talking about King Crimson all the friggin' time now. It's in the background footage of this Q&A just because I wanted to mess with those people. But King Crimson, right, at the very highest level apparently is broken overpowered. I still haven't seen it. Like, I've seen good players with it, but I've never seen this, like, impossible to fight, most oppressive stand in the game. I'm sure I'll see it someday, apparently, because apparently it exists, but I still haven't seen it from all of my times playing and all of the King Crimsons I've fought. But regardless, assuming that this is true, King Crimson is already in a spot where if you're not super good at the game, it's hard to use. So if we nerf it even more, we get to a point where King Crimson, a fan favorite stand that lots of people like, is now unusable to the majority of the player base. It's just ass. That's not good. That's not what we want. And a lot of people don't consider that. They just are in their 1v1 minds, and they're like, well, in 1v1s at the highest possible level, this is broken. Okay, well, I got bad news for you. The highest possible level is not what 99% of the players of this game are playing. And when it comes to balancing the game, it's definitely a balance between balancing towards higher level play and balancing towards lower level play. And if something completely compromises it to the point where one extreme is completely unplayable, that's an issue. So that's why a lot of community balance suggestions and stuff don't go through, because they're usually not super well thought out in terms of everything other than what the one specific thing that they're trying to fix is. Moving forward, Kaz5489 says, knowing about your channel's performance history with games outside of Roblox, what games do you actually play when not recording? Any games that you've played or are actively playing that have never been on the channel before? Not really when it comes to things that have never been on the channel before, and honestly, recently pretty much everything that I've been playing is in order to record for it. Although, in fairness, one of those things is Escape from Tarkov, and that's one of those things where a lot of the time I'll just jump on, throw on my replay buffer for OBS, and just play the game, and if something interesting or fun happens, I'll save it. So that doesn't really count. There are times where I go on specifically to record for it, but for the most part, I'm just playing it normally. Tarkov is in the spot where it's like the most fun I've had with it ever in pretty much the entire life cycle of the game. I've had one of my friends who I haven't played with in a while, who I'm basically playing with every single day, and in general, it's just been a ton of fun. But outside of that, the only two games that I play pretty much every day are TCA and Tarkov, and games that are upcoming, I'm not excited for basically any of them. I know GTA 6 is coming out in like 2025, but I don't play on console, so I don't have to worry about that. And on top of that, the online for that game is inevitably going to be as much of a dumpster fire as GTA 5 online and Red Dead 2 online, so I'm not very excited for that. And I just feel like as I get older, I get more and more jaded when it comes to video game releases. I'm excited for whatever the next Battlefield release is, even though I have no idea what it is and know nothing about it, but I don't know when that's coming out. I feel like almost every single franchise that I used to be excited for has kind of gone down the toilet, or I don't really play anymore, which is sad, and I think that's a result of just getting older and having more things I need to worry about, but that's just sort of the way it is. Next question is from Bread795, who says, with the return of Eclipse FPS, which I've been enjoying, will we see a return of any forms of streaming on Twitch? Short answer, no. I feel like I answer the stream question every single Q&A. And I'm surprised I keep having to answer it. But streams are a really big thing that take a toll on me. And I think the big reason for that is because of how structured they are in terms of when they need to come out, how scheduled they are. The thing about my job that's really, really nice, and definitely the best part about doing YouTube, is the fact that I can basically take time off whenever I want. I can just stop working, go do something, and then come back to what I was just working on an hour later. No one's gonna get on my ass, and I'll have to work an hour later at night, but it doesn't matter. Like, I'll still get my shit done, and as long as it gets done, that's what matters. I don't have anyone breathing down my neck, you know, that kind of stuff. But the problem with streams is that they're pretty much always on like a set time. It's like I'm going to stream from now until now. So it's like 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And if I'm not there for the stream from 3 to 5 p.m., it's not really huge skin off of anyone's back, and it really shouldn't be off of mine either. But the entire time I'll be feeling bad because I effectively missed a deadline. So when it comes to my mental health, it takes a serious toll, even though it probably shouldn't. The only thing that I can see myself doing streams for is the tournaments, which is also a massive back-end pain in the ass and something that I've been sort of doing some stuff for, but every time I start doing it, I realize how much of an undertaking it is, and I just sort of give up halfway, which is why we haven't seen it yet. But I would like to start doing that again. But as for streams, just in general, not likely whatsoever. And the final question is from GoneFreaks9868, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, and it says, how do you format your videos? You speak fluently with pretty much no mistakes at all. I'm trying to be a content creator myself, but I'm struggling on doing either voiceovers or just talking to a screen. Regardless, love your videos and have a good one. Fun fact on that, I actually had to do like 4 takes in order to get through that the first time I did this and it wasn't recording, and I made a joke about it, and then I did it in one try this time, so I can't make the joke. God damn it. Anyways, the big thing here is practice, practice, practice. If you want to see someone who did not have practice and sucked ass at this, go to my channel, search by oldest videos, and click some of my early Tarkov videos, where I sound like a zombie, and I just had no charisma, and I was really bad at talking to cameras. It was rough. Definitely rough. That's probably what you sound like, and it's just solely because you haven't had too much practice. So if you keep going, you're eventually going to get to the point where you're able to talk to a camera a lot more comfortably. That being said, when it comes to making mistakes and stuff like that, I think that really comes down to just how fluent of a speaker you are. I'd like to think I'm relatively fluent of a speaker. If you go and watch my Twitch streams or my old VODs, you can sort of see that. I'm pretty good at just rambling on and on and on and on and on about random crap, which is why I would be a good Twitch streamer if I didn't have to, you know, constantly actually stream. But regardless, if you're not that fluent of a speaker and you're not good at coming up with stuff on the spot, that's where scripts are going to help you a lot. But on the flip side, scripts can be a double-edged sword, and you can sometimes sound like a robot while you're talking out of them. I'm notoriously bad at reading scripts. I've gotten a little bit better over the years, but I think it's still kind of rough, and sometimes you can tell when I'm reading from a script and when I'm not. And the other thing is that you have a tendency of writing and typing differently than how you speak. So if you're reading a script and you're like, I don't think I would say it that way, there's no shame in just changing it in the edit. Editing magic is the big one. You say that I speak fluently with no mistakes, and that's because I edit out all my mistakes. I mean, I'm not just gonna leave that in there. Sometimes I do, sometimes I forget, but for the most part, I'm gonna edit it out. Personally, for me, when I do most of my videos, I usually have a bullet point list of what I want to talk about, unless it's like directly a live commentary. And for some videos, like my most recent one on Tarkov, I have pretty much a full script of exactly what I'm going to say and when things pop up. If you're looking for the best structure possible, I'd go with a full script. But if you just want to get a video out relatively quickly, bullet points are the way to go. And then if you're doing a live commentary, God help you, just practice. That's the only way. Anyways, that was the last question on here, so we're going to be wrapping up for today. A lot of these questions were pretty good, so I'm looking forward to next month's if the quality continues on this trend. Anyways, with that being said, I'm done. So if you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't, don't. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time. I actually recorded it that time. Thank fucking God.